Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session of Breathing and Exchange of Gases NCERT exercise part 2. Disclaimer. Learning objective. So we will explore and understand the fundamental concept of the chapter 14, Breathing and Exchange of Gases, by working through the NCERT exercise. So, index part, that is, we are going to solve question number 9 to question number 14. So, index part, NCERT exercise question number 9 to question number 14. And this is the chapter Breathing and Exchange of Gases, right? So, question number 9. What happened to the respiratory processes in the main man going up a hill? This question is coming from the NCERT section 14.6. So, question is asking, when a person is going to the hill, then what will happen to the respiratory processes? Let us see the answer of this question. So this is our question, that what happened to the respiratory processes in man going up a hill. So when we go up to the hill, what is increases? Altitude. Altitude increases and the oxygen level in the atmosphere decreases, because at the higher altitude the pressure of air is less. Why the pressure of air is less? Because the presence of air is less there. Okay, so as you all know that the mixture of gases, air is a mixture of gases, and every gas exert it partial pressure, and when you add all the partial pressure of the gases that is present, that brings up the pressure exerted by the air. So here what we see, what we uh as see there, when we go to the higher altitude, the height is increasing and oxygen level, as oxygen is a part of the air, so that also decreases when we go to the higher altitude. A man goes uphill, the oxygen level decreases. So how we feel there? We feel that we are not getting proper oxygen in our body, right? And this causes the amount of oxygen in the blood to decline. The amount of oxygen that is required by the body, we are not getting that much amount of oxygen, right? Because when we breathe, the oxygen goes into our lungs, and from the lungs it gets dissolved into the blood. So we cannot get the amount of oxygen that we require. So what can we do? The respiratory rate increases in response to the decrease in the oxygen content of the blood. So there you breathe more, you take your breathing increases, right? Your breathing is not a normal one. Here you breathe more, so that more and more oxygen you can get. The amount reaches to the normal. It is get compensated by rate, increase the rate of uh, respiration, right? Simultaneously, the rate of heartbeat increases to increase the supply of oxygen to the blood. So what is related to the heartbeat here? Why it is related to the heartbeat? Because when you breathe more, for that it means that there is a good circulation of blood in your body. So how it is done? It is done by increasing the heartbeat rate. So when we get less oxygen, this is sensed by the heart. And what it do? It increases the heartbeat. So when the heartbeat increases, more and more oxygen could be supplied to the body, because body require a adequate amount of oxygen. Our metabolic activities are not going to the rest, right? It is there, and for that you require oxygen. So when oxygen decreases in the lung region, right, it is responded to the heart, and in return heart increases its the rhythmic contraction and relaxation, that is the heartbeat, right? So once the heart beat increases, the normal amount of oxygen reaches to the body parts. But what about in the case of your lungs? How you compensate that oxygen? By increasing the rate of breathing. So two things are there. One is the rate of respiration increases, and second, the rate of heartbeat increases, right? So in this way we can compensate. But once you go to the higher hilly region, you need a day to get acclimatized there. You take a rest there, because there is a lot of vomiting also, right? So once slowly one day you require to take rest in that particular situation, right? And there you get acclimatized, then you can go and see all that places. I'm taking an example of a visit to the Ladakh. So when you go to the Ladakh region, you experiences these things. You experience, because at that high altitude, the oxygen that is present in the air is very less. So these things happen. One day your body get acclimatized that they have to continuously increase the breathing rate, and second, continuously increase the heartbeat rate. In that way, whatever the oxygen is required by our body, it is provided by the body by changing these two things, right? Okay, so I hope you understand this question. Two things you have to remember. Two things are changing in our body, right? Okay, let us move to our next question. Next question is here, very important. What is the site of gaseous exchange in an insect? In an insect, where the gaseous exchange takes place? This question is coming from the NCERT section 14.3. 14.3. Let us see the answer. So this was our question. And insect breathe through a system called tracheal tubes. Tracheal tubes. So what is this tracheal tube? When you see the insect's body inside its anatomy, so there you see they are having a lot of tube-like structure that is running all over the body, right? And that is called as tracheal tubes. Spiracles are the tiny openings located on the side of the insect body, and these are the tiny openings, small holes like opening, that are called as spiracles, and they are present where they are located? They are present on the side of the insect body, Through these opening, the air get enter inside this tracheal tube, because this opening leads to the tracheal tube. We will see the figure here. With that you can able to understand that. So here you can see this is a insect, and you can see that in the sideways they are having the small holes like opening. These are called as spiracles, and these spiracles, see this one, these opening that is called as spiracles, it leads to a tube like structure that is called as trachea. Now these trachea give rise the small branching that is called as tracheoles, and these tracheoles are joined to the muscles. So from these spiracles, the air moves to this tracheal tube and reaches to the muscles, right? In this way, and there are a lot of hemolymph there, so that oxygen get dissolved in that hemolymph, right? You must be knowing that the insect is having blood which is colorless. They are not having any hemoglobin, right? They are not having any hemoglobin. So the insect of blood, you must be have seen that if the insect got crushed in any way, you can see the white creamy substance, right? That white creamy substance is the hemolymph that is filled in all over its the cavity they are having, right? And these tracheal tube, they run parallelly as well as horizontally. You can see this trachea, the one that is running parallel this way, and you can see some horizontal tubes are also there, so they are joining to the parallel one. So all it makes a network in the body, and through this network the air is moving all over its body, means air can reach to the every parts of the body. But how it is moving, you can see they are moving not via blood, they are moving via tracheal tubes, right? So air with the oxygen enter through these spiracles, okay? So you must remember the spiracles that are present on the sideways of the body and the tracheal tube that is present inside the body. This makes actually the respiratory system in the case of insect, respiratory system. Now, spiracle connect to a network of internal tubes that is called as trachea. They are having internal tube inside the body, and these internal tube are actually making the network, right? Network of trachea. Oxygen move from the trachea directly into the body cells through diffusion. So through diffusion process, okay, this is the actual way. This is the way through which the oxygen moves directly to the body cells through the process of diffusion, means the air moves in the body from region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration, right? So in the from the trachea, the air moves directly to the surrounding body cells to the trachea, right? In this way, this trachea becomes the site of gaseous exchange. The question was this: what is the site of gaseous exchange? Throughout its body there is a network of tracheal tube, and that is the site of exchange. Next question is here: define oxygen dissociation curve. Can you suggest any reason for this sigmoidal pattern? So we must have seen that the sigmoid pattern of the oxygen dissociation curve, right? Why they are having such a sigmoidal pattern? NCERT section 14.4, the question has been asked. Let us see the answer of this question. So the first question is define oxygen dissociation curve. Oxygen dissociation curve shows the relation between the oxygen partial pressure and hemoglobin saturation, right? How the oxygen is get associated with the hemoglobin, because on the oxygen dissociation curve on the x-axis, what you see, the partial pressure of oxygen in mmHg, partial pressure of oxygen in mmHg. This is the horizontal curve, and what is written here? PO2 means partial pressure of oxygen, right? See the y-axis, what it is written? Percentage of saturation hemoglobin, how the hemoglobin got saturated, when it get oxygen. So it shows the relationship between the oxygen partial pressure and hemoglobin saturation. So here you can see, as the concentration of oxygen increases, your hemoglobin gets saturated at this particular level. And once you see that at a very high pressure, all the oxygen got saturated. Once a position reach where you can see that all the hemoglobin got saturated, right? So demonstrate oxygen hemoglobin binding equilibrium. This is the curve or the graph that shows how the partial pressure of oxygen, means how the oxygen get combined with the hemoglobin. So initially what you see, the partial pressure of oxygen is less, right? What you see, very less amount of oxygen, hemoglobin gets saturated with it, right? So this curve is called the oxygen dissociation curve also, and it is highly useful in studying the effect of the factors like PCO2 and hydrogen concentration. How the oxygen get dissociated, right? Oxygen dissociated, remember, and how the carbon dioxide get combine it with when it reaches to the tissue, when it reaches to the tissue. So what happened at the lungs region? First of all, let us see that high oxygen pressure, because in the alveoli, what is there in the alveoli? Very high percentage of oxygen is there, right? So partial pressure of oxygen is high in the case of alveoli. And the alveoli, surrounding the alveoli, there are a lot of blood capillaries which is having a lot of hemoglobin there. Blood capillaries is there, so they contain the hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin is available for oxygen. So high oxygen pressure promotes the oxygen binding to the hemoglobin. As you know that if the partial pressure of oxygen is high, it get combined with hemoglobin, right? So as the partial pressure of reaches from 10 to 20, you can see here 50% of hemoglobin got combined with the oxygen. Now 40%, you see at the 40%, what happened at the 40%? Here 80% of the hemoglobin got combined with the oxygen. Now what happened at the 60%? Let us see that 90% of the oxygen got combined and reaches to the 70, and you can see that 100, almost 100% of, not actual 100%, it is less than that, but almost all the hemoglobin got saturated with the oxygen. So what is increasing here? Partial pressure of oxygen, right? And this is happening in the lung region. Now let us see at the tissue level, what happened at the tissue level. Now in tissues, low oxygen pressure. Why the oxygen is low here? Why the oxygen is low here? Can anyone can tell me? Why oxygen is low in the case of tissue? Anyone? What happens at the tissue level? See, at the tissue level, what is produced more and more in the tissue? In the tissue, there is a cellular respiration. And what is released in the cellular respiration? Carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is released, right? The glycolysis is there, the Krebs cycle is there, the electron transport system is there. And in that process, what is released? Carbon dioxide gas is released out, right? So at the tissue, there is high partial pressure of carbon dioxide, not the oxygen, not the oxygen. Yes, the partial pressure of oxygen is more. The artery or the capillary that reaches to the tissue, they are having high pressure of oxygen, but not the tissue, right? So oxygen releases from the hemoglobin. The this tissue, when this tissue is having high concentration of carbon dioxide, the hemoglobin can sense that. And what happened? Oxygen is released, oxygen is broken, or you can say departed with the hemoglobin, get dissociated, and oxygen reaches to the tissue because the gas oxygen move from region from the high concentration to the region of lower concentration. So blood is having high concentration of oxygen, but the tissue is having low concentration of oxygen. So from the blood the oxygen moves to the tissue, and just opposite happens in the tissue. The tissue is having high concentration of carbon dioxide, and blood is having low concentration of carbon dioxide. So it moves from region of high concentration to the region of lower concentration. So that is why it is written here, low oxygen pressure in tissue and oxygen releases from the hemoglobin, right? So in this way, this graph also that is why it is called as oxygen dissociation curve. Oxygen dissociation curve. So curve is S shaped. If you see the shape of the curve, it is actually the S shaped or sigmoid due to the cooperative binding. Cooperative binding. What is binding here? What is binding here? Can anyone can tell which thing is binding which thing? There is a binding of something. What is binding? Oxygen binding with whom? Oxygen binding with, yes, oxygen is binding with hemoglobin at the base of the curve, and it binding is occurring at which organ? At which organ the oxygen is binding? Where the oxygen is binding with the hemoglobin, where this binding process is occurring, which organ? Alveoli. Correct, absolutely correct. This binding is occurring at the alveoli region. This is actually the, you can say, the unit of lung. So that is why I took a name called lung. If you say that at the lung region, that is also correct. If you say the alveoli, that is also absolutely correct. Okay, so cooperative binding is occurring at the alveoli region. Binding, the term binding. Okay, now where the dissociation is occurring? Oxygen get dissociated from hemoglobin. Where? At which point? At which level? Where? Tissues. Absolutely. At the tissue level, the dissociation is occurring, right? So first oxygen molecule increases affinity for the next molecule. So again, coming to the binding activity, once the first oxygen got bind with the hemoglobin, and you all know one hemoglobin molecule can carry how many molecules of oxygen? How many molecules of oxygen is carried by one molecule of hemoglobin? This I have explained when I was telling you about when we are discussing about the theory part of this chapter. One molecule of hemoglobin, okay, carry how many molecules of oxygen? Yes, 4 molecules. 4 molecules of oxygen is carried by one molecule of hemoglobin. So if we talk about the hemoglobin, then hemoglobin can take first oxygen And in that way, once it attached with the first oxygen, the affinity for the next oxygen increases, right? So that is why it is mentioned here, first oxygen molecule increases the affinity for the next coming oxygen molecule, next coming up of the oxygen molecule, right? Sequential increases in binding affinity, and once the second one combined with the hemoglobin, it increases the affinity for the third one, and once the third get combined with the hemoglobin, it increases the affinity for the fourth one, but not more than 4. One hemoglobin can adjust the 4 molecules of oxygen. So this curve is S-shaped sigmoid due to the these are the first thing, right? So in that way, the oxygen, you can see it is very slow, but you can see the exponential growth of the curve. Why it is getting exponential growth? Because initially the combination is slow. Initially the combination is slow. So here you can see when you are reaching this, it is very slow, but at this pace, it is very, very fast, very fast, right? Okay, because first, second, third, fourth, reaching to the fourth molecule, the affinity get increases 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, in this way. So that is why it is attaining an sigmoid curve. The question is asked why it is taking the sigmoid curve. So this is the explanation, one of the reason, right? Next question is here. Have you heard about hypoxia? Try to gather information about it and discuss with your friend. This question is coming from the NCERT section 14.6. Let us see the answer of this question. Okay, let us see what is hypoxia. Hypoxia is a condition characterized by an inadequate or decreased supply of oxygen to the lungs, right? So when the supply of oxygen is less, then we can say that this is the hypoxia condition. And this could be of any reason. There are so many reasons for this. Decreased supply of oxygen to the lungs. So it is caused by several extrinsic factor. Extrinsic factor means the factor out from the body. It is not intrinsic factor. If it is intrinsic factor, then that factor will be leading from inside the body. But here it is mentioned several extrinsic factor. Such as reduction in partial pressure of oxygen. And the first question today what we have solved, that gives you the reason, the reduction in partial pressure of oxygen or inadequate oxygen. The oxygen is not in a proper way, or the percentage or the concentration of oxygen that should be there in a air, that is not present. Once you reach to the hilly region, there the oxygen is less. So the first reason, the factors such as reduction in partial pressure of oxygen, right? Now we are having different types of hypoxia, because this is for hypoxia, there could not be just only one reason, there could be many reasons, right? Let us see what are the different aspects for this particular condition. Hypoxemic hypoxia, low oxygen in blood due to the reduced arterial oxygen pressure. Oxygen is in adequate amount, but the arterial oxygen pressure is less. Your heart is not properly functioning at that time. So what will happen? The arterial oxygen pressure get reduced, right? So this condition is called as hypoxemic hypoxia. Hypoxemic hypoxia, right? Next condition is anemic hypoxia. Anemic hypoxia. So what happened in this condition? Decreased hemoglobin concentration in blood. If the hemoglobin concentration in the blood is less, so again, if less hemoglobin is there, so adequate amount of oxygen will not reach to your tissue, right? So decreased hemoglobin, and that could be due to reason of anemic. There are some patients that are anemic. Anemic means their hemoglobin is not at the normal level. So there, the supply of oxygen to the blood will be less, right? So this is the second reason, or you can say the second type of hypoxia. Next is the stagnant ischemic hypoxia. Poor blood circulation, often due to the prolonged cold exposure. If you are exposed to a very cold place, suppose you are having on the very high altitude where the you can see the everywhere there is ice, such a chilling condition is there, so there your blood circulation will be affected, right? So there the poor blood circulation will not you can say allow the oxygen to reach to the tissue properly, right? So that will be affected, and often due to the prolonged cold exposure. This poor blood circulation is due to the prolonged cold exposure. So at that reason also, our body or the tissue will not get the proper oxygen, right? Histotoxic hypoxia, tissue unable to utilize oxygen. Oxygen is reached to the tissue properly. Oxygen is reaching to the tissue properly, but the tissue is unable to utilize the oxygen. This is happening at the tissue level, right? So common in carbon monoxide or cyanide poisoning. Okay, cyanide poisoning, this could be happen. So carbon monoxide is very, very dangerous, right? How it is dangerous? I've told you this, that once the carbon monoxide get combined with the hemoglobin, it will not get dissociated. You must have seen that oxygen get combined with the hemoglobin, right? And it get dissociated when it reaches to the tissue. Carbon dioxide also get combined with the RBC. It combined with the hemoglobin, carboxyhemoglobin. But when it reaches to the lung, it get dissociated. But once carbon monoxide get combined with the hemoglobin, it will not get dissociated. It means that that hemoglobin is not free for the transportation of oxygen. So in that way also our body will get less amount of oxygen. That is the histotoxic hypoxia. And that is why the cigarette when burns, and that smoke is having this carbon monoxide, and when it reaches to our lung region, what happens? The carbon monoxide get combined with the hemoglobin. It combined with the hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is not available for the oxygen to get combined. So your breathing is your respiration is affected there, right? That is why this is always written on the packs of the cigarette. Smoking cigarette is injurious to health, but still people smoke, right? Okay, next question. Distinguish between NCERT section 14.2. So we have to distinguish between first A, IRV and ERV. B, inspiratory capacity and expiratory capacity. C, vital capacity and total lung capacity. One of the very, very important question from this NCERT exercise. Let us see the answer of this question. First difference, IRV and ERV. IRV means inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume. What is that? Inspiratory reserve volume. It is the maximum volume of air that can be inhaled from a normal inspiration, right? When we inhale, right? Normally, when we inhale normally, that is the maximum volume of air when it reaches to our body, right? So a person can inspire by a forceful inspiration. This is around, it is around 2500 ml to 3000 ml, right? 3 to 3500 in human lungs, right? That is the inspiratory reserve volume. What is expiratory reserve volume? It is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after normal expiration. It is around 1000 ml to 1100 ml in the human lungs. So this is the difference between the IRV and ERV. Okay. So here you can see IRV, the graph is shown here, IRV. This is the vital capacity or tidal volume, that is 500 ml. You can see here tidal volume. And from this tidal volume, this dotted line up to the 6. So this is the IRV, inspiratory reserve volume, inspiration. Now, expiratory reserve volume is related to the expiration. Just below the tidal volume, what you see here, ERV, that is around 1500 ml, right? Next difference is the inspiratory capacity and expiratory capacity. Let us see that. Okay. It is the volume of air that can be inhaled after normal expiration. Normal expiration. Right? Total volume of air a person can inspire after normal expiration. And this include the tidal volume and the inspiratory reserve volume. Right? So two things are there in the inspiratory capacity. So wherever the capacity comes, it is the combination of the volume. It is the combination of the volume. So here it is talking about the capacity, right? Capacity. So wherever the capacity comes, you should remember that there are two volumes that combines, it will gives you the capacity. So tidal volume is always there, whether you are talking about the expiratory and inspiratory. This is the way you can remember. I'm telling you to remember these things. So inspiratory capacity equal to tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume, right? Now, see this. Expiratory capacity. It is the volume of air that can be exhaled after normal inspiration. Once you do the normal respiration, you exhale out the amount of air, right? So it includes the two things again because it is a capacity. What is that? Tidal volume and expiratory reserve volume. Expiratory reserve volume. So EC is equal to TV plus ERV. This is the formula, right? And you can solve some numerical also if it is asked in the examination on the basis of this. For this, you have to remember the formulas. You have to remember what is the meaning of capacity, what is the volume. When there is volume, you can say that see that it is not having any combination of two things, tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, ERV, expiratory reserve volume, or the residual volume, the four different types of volumes. And after that we are having 5 different types of capacity. 5 different types of capacity. Out of these three capacities, inspiratory capacity, expiratory capacity, and functional residual capacity, these are the combination of two volumes, but the vital capacity and total lung capacity, it is more than two. It is more than two volumes. Sorry. So here you can see the inspiratory capacity. Here you can see IC. IC means inspiratory capacity. So TV, tidal volume is here. TV, tidal volume is here, and IRV is here. IRV is here. So tidal volume and IRV will combine and it will give you the inspiratory capacity. Similarly, you can see the EC, right? Next difference is between the vital capacity and the total lung capacity. It is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after maximum inspiration. So when you can do the maximum inspiration? When you have a forceful inspiration. When you are having the forceful inspiration, right? So that is reaches to the maximum level, and when it is the maximum, so your maximum volume of air is there, so that you exhaled out, right? So it include inspiratory capacity plus ERV, inspiratory capacity plus ERV, and it is about 4000 ml in the human lungs, right? Vital capacity, the maximum volume of air to a person can breathe in, volume of air a person can breathe out after the forced inspiration, right? So this includes ERV and inspiratory capacity. If you are not take the inspiratory capacity, you can say that ERV, TV plus IRV, because TV plus IRV is inspiratory capacity. Coming to the total lung capacity, it is the volume of air in the lungs after maximum inspiration, maximum. So it include IC and ERV, also the residual volume, right? So it is around 5000 to 6000 ml in the human lungs, right? So here up to here you can see vital capacity. So ERV, tidal volume, and IRV, right? So these are the vital capacity on the graph. You can see 4500 ml of range, or 4000 to 5000, 4000 to 4500 ml. Now total lung capacity you can see here. It is IRV, it is this tidal volume, ERV, right, and residual volume. All is added to get the total lung capacity. So I told you in previous class also that you have to remember this graph, and it is very, very important. You can see here 4 volumes and 4 capacity, right? Next question, what is tidal volume? Find out the tidal volume approximate value for a healthy human in an hour. So this is a numerical based, right, question. This question is coming from the NCERT section 14.2. Let us see the answer of this question. Tidal volume is the volume of air inspired or expired during the normal respiration. When you are doing the normal respiration, the amount of air that you take in for the inspiration process, or when you take out for the expiration process normally, right? So in a healthy man, it is approximately 500 ml. That is, a healthy man can inspire or expire approximately 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. How it is? Let us see. So we breathe 12 to 16 times at rest and average tidal volume is 500 ml. It is resting. How much time we breathe in a second, in a minute? So that is 12 to 16 times when we are at rest. That is, the tidal volume is 500 ml. So therefore, it is about 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. You can calculate it, right? So the hourly tidal volume, because here it is asked about the hour, not the minute. The hourly volume for a healthy human can be calculated as tidal volume 6,000 to 8,000 ml. I hope how this takes 6,000 to 8,000 it is coming. See, it is 5,000 500 ml tidal volume. Multiply it with 12 or 16, because in a minute you breathe 12 or 16 times normally at the rest. So multiply 500 to 12, you will get 6,000, and when you multiply it with 16, you get 8,000 ml per minute. This is the tidal volume per minute, not the second, right? Okay. Now they are asking for a hour. So total tidal volume in an hour, it is 6,000 to 800 ml into 60 minutes, because in a minute there are 60, in an hour there are 60 minutes. So it will be 3.6 into 10 to the power 5 to 4.8 into 10 to the power 5. If you multiply with 6,000 to 60 minutes, convert it in a second. So you can multiply it and you can get the number. Similarly, for 8,000 ml, you will get 4.8 into 10 to the power 5 ml. So therefore, hourly tidal volume for a healthy human is approximately 3.6 into 10 to the power 5 ml to 4.8 into 10 to the power 5 ml. Very, very important question. In this way, you can write it in the examination when it is asked about. Okay. Okay, now here we are having some MCQs question that are totally NCERT based, right? So the first question is here. What is the role of surfactant in the alveoli? I hope you know surfactant. Surfactants are the substance that stop the particles that comes along with the air in our respiratory tract, right? What is the role of surfactant it here? A, to transport oxygen, to reduce the surface tension and prevent alveolar collapse, to produce mucus, and D, to facilitate the carbon dioxide diffusion, right? Carbon dioxide diffusion. Let us see the answer of this question. So the correct answer is B, to reduce the surface tension and prevent alveolar collapse. Surfactant is a mixture of phospholipid and protein produced by type 2 alveolar cells that forms a thin layer over the inner surface of alveoli, right? These are the type of surfactants are the mixture of phospholipids and proteins, right? These are the phospholipids and proteins, and they are produced by what type of cells? Type 2 alveolar cells. What are these? Type 2 alveolar cells are also known as type 2 pneumocytes, a type of cell formed in the lungs. They are crucial for maintaining the lung health due to their diverse function, including the surfactant production, right? These are the cells cells of the lungs that produces the surfactant, and alveolar regeneration after the injury, right? Sometimes the alveoli get damaged, so they produce more alveoli. Apart from the damage, they can form new. So these type 2 alveolar cells are doing many functions. Once they are producing the surfactant, right? And another things, they are producing the new alveolar cells, right, after the injury. So it reduces the surface tension by disrupting the attraction between the water molecules in the fluid layer lining the alveoli, right? Surface tension will be reduced. How it is reduced? By disrupting the attraction between the water molecules in the fluid layer lining the alveoli, right? Because there are a lot of water molecules just around the this alveoli region. So it reduces this uh, attraction between the water molecules and the fluid layer lining the alveoli. So this is the function, that making it easier for alveoli to expand during inhalation, right? So in this way, it is quite easier for alveoli to expand when the surface tension is reduced, and its support for the process of inhalation. Without surfactant, high surface tension would cause alveoli to collapse during exhalation, making breathing difficult and reducing gas exchange efficiency, right? So surfactants are there to reduce the surface tension, that is helping in the process of inhalation, right? Moving to our next question. What happens to the diaphragm during inhalation? What happens to the this diaphragm during inhalation? A. It relaxes and moves upward. It contracts and moves upward. It relaxes and moves downward. It contracts and moves downward. Let us see the answer of this question. So the correct answer is option D. It contracts and move downwards. So when we inhale, the diaphragm, that is dome shaped muscles belongs below lungs, contract and flatten downward. There is a muscles that is attached with the diaphragm. So that contract and it pushes the diaphragm downward, making it flat. Earlier it was dome shaped, but when it get contracted, it is pushed by the contracted muscles, it becomes flat and move downward, increasing the volume of the thoracic cavity, right? So moving the downward of this diaphragm increases the thoracic cavity, and that decreases the partial pressure of air in the lung region, in the thoracic cavity, and air moves from outside to inside, means from the outer environment to the your this respiratory organ, lung. So this downward movement creates a negative pressure, or you can say the lower pressure in the chest cavity, causing the lungs to expand. And as the lung expand, air rushes in through the nose and mouth to fill the increased space, similar to how a vacuum works. Next question. Which gas is produced during the cellular respiration and needs to be removed from the body? I think this is a very, very easy question. A. Oxygen, B. Carbon dioxide, C. Nitrogen, and D. Hydrogen. So B. Carbon dioxide, we all know. During cellular respiration, cells break down glucose, food, using the oxygen to produce energy, ATP. So this is the waste gas. This process creates a lot of carbon dioxide as a waste product. and the carbon dioxide enters the bloodstream and it is transported to the lungs. So where it need to be expelled from the body through the exhalation process. And if carbon dioxide build up in the body, and it can lead to the acidosis, increasing the blood acidity and other health problem. If the concentration of carbon dioxide increases or it is not eliminated from the body immediately. Next question. In what forms is most of the carbon dioxide is transported in the blood? In which form? Most means percentage they are considering. Options are as follows: A, dissolved in plasma; B, as carbaminohemoglobin; C, as bicarbonate ions; and D, bound to hemoglobin. Let us see the answer of this question. Answer is option C, yes, as a bicarbonate ions. So approximately 70% of carbon dioxide is transported as a bicarbonate ions, HCO3 minus ion in the blood. This is the bicarbonate ion, right? And it is formed when carbon dioxide combined with the water in red blood cells, RBC, in the enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. This carbonic anhydrase is present in RBC, right? In the RBC only. So the chemical reaction CO2 plus H2O gives H2CO3, that forms the hydrogen ion, plus HCO3 minus ion, that is the carbon dioxide plus water, gives carbonic acid, right? And this get dissociated, this carbonic acid get dissociated and forms hydrogen ions plus bicarbonate ion, right? So this form, the transport is most efficient because the bicarbonate ion are highly soluble in plasma. Once this get formed, this bicarbonate ion, it move from RBC to the plasma, and this is more soluble in plasma. So in this way, major carbon dioxide from the tissue is transported via blood. So this system also helps maintain the blood pH through the bicarbonate buffer system. This is one of the more important thing, that it maintain the blood pH, that is around 7.4. Next question. What is the function of the respiratory center in the brain? Options: A, to control heart rate; B, to regulate the breathing rate and depth; C, to control body temperature; D, to regulate blood pressure. Let us see the answer of this question. B1 is correct, to regulate the breathing rate and depth. So the respiratory center is located in the medulla oblongata and pons of the brain stem. Okay, the hindbrain part, medulla oblongata, and the round portion of the stem just above the medulla oblongata, this is called as pons. So this is the main part of the brain stem. So the respiratory center is located here. It is the primary function is to control the breathing patterns. It receives the input from the various sensor. So around this pons and medulla oblongata, there are some chemoreceptors that monitor the blood oxygen level, carbon dioxide levels, and also the pH. So if they find any change in the oxygen level or the carbon dioxide level or the pH level, they allow it to adjust via breathing rate and depth accordingly. They changes the breathing rate because they are continuously sensing by the chemoreceptors that are present along this pons and medulla oblongata. They are sensing the blood oxygen level, carbon dioxide level, and also the pH. So the respiratory center automatically adjusts breathing pattern based on the body needs, right? Such as increasing ventilation during the exercise or decreasing it during the rest without conscious control. Next question. What is the approximate percentage of oxygen in exhaled air? A 21%, B 16%, C 4%, and D 10%. Let us see the answer. B 16% is the correct answer. When we inhale atmospheric air, it contains 21% of oxygen, right? But not all of this oxygen is absorbed during respiration. During the gas exchange, the process in the lungs, only about 5% of the oxygen is absorbed in the bloodstream through the alveoli. And this results in exhaled air containing approximately 16% of oxygen. Along with the increased carbon dioxide, about 4% compared to the inhaled air, 0.04%, right? So this is all about today's session. Thank you very much for attending today's session. We will meet again tomorrow, same time. Till then, take care.